A vaudevillian, a stand-up, and an impressionist walk into a bar, and nobody laughs. How come? David Misch could tell you. He wrote the book Funny, the book, everything you always wanted to know about comedy. And he talked about it at KPCC's Crawford Family Forum with comedian Alonzo Bodden.
Let's talk about some funny people.
One of the guys who came out of vaudeville was Jack Benny, who had an amazing career in vaudeville and radio and TV. One of the examples he gives is how comedy changed from being about cheap gags about ethnicities, which is almost what all vaudeville routines were, and bringing your own personality to it, to the point where, and this is the golden moment, and I'm sure you're aware of it, where you can get a laugh on a line that isn't inherently funny. It's only funny because of the personality of the person saying it. Jack Benny, what he's best remembered for is one joke, which I'm going to play for you. His persona was cheap. So one night he's walking back to his home and he's approached by a robber.
Mister, put down that gun. Shut up. I said this is a sticker. I'm thinking it over.
And one of the great things there is he gets a laugh on silence.
Yeah. Everyone at that time knew he was thinking.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing next stand-up you watch, see how many jokes are funny because of the personality of the comedian. Woody Allen, in his early career, he was performing in Greenwich Village, and a guy told him that someone was doing his jokes in another club, and he said, I don't care. The other guy is not going to be able to come up with any more. He won't have my delivery, and he's going to end up going nowhere, so it's not even worth worrying about, and I think that's very true.
You know, I always joke about I work with quite a few musicians. Like I know jazz musicians who can just play something Miles Davis wrote 50 years ago, and the audience goes crazy. And never in my act can I say, this one was back in '83 from Eddie Murphy. I'd like to throw you a little honeymooners, you know. What can you tell us about that as research and from the book?
The whole question is loaded. I don't know if you saw the documentary Comedian with Jerry Seinfeld. Mm-hmm. And there's a scene shot in a comedy club. One comic comes up to another comic and says, that snoring routine you did, you just stole it. And the other comic says, I didn't steal your snoring routine. I've never seen you do it. He said, well, you're doing this exact same idea. It's not the precise wording, the same idea. And the other guy says, you don't own snoring. Comedians, like all writers, come upon similar ideas, and they sometimes come out, individually. So that's not stealing. But stealing is an important part of comedy. I worked with a very famous comedian who, after a few years, could not walk into a comedy club. No comedian would go on stage because he had such a reputation for stealing people's jokes. Ultimately, I think creativity comes from many different sources, and you can't stop other things from coming in and influencing you, but ultimately you have to put your own stamp on it.
So let's talk about, and you mentioned it earlier, but I love this idea, morality in comedy.
Comedy and morality seem to be, in some people's minds, mortal enemies. But in fact, comedy helps define morality by what it pushes against and what it explores. And the example I use in talking across this great land of ours is the producers, because my mother would never buy a German car, and she could not find the producers funny. She was Jewish. But Jews are split right down the middle on the producers, and as are many other people. The argument against the producers, actually, let's show a clip from it first. Two crooked theater producers get lots of money to put on a show and find the most offensive play possible, hoping it will close the first night and they can escape with the profits. Here's the big musical number. So here's the cool thing. Obviously, many people find that offensive, many people don't. Brooks had an agenda. His agenda was to kill Hitler. He was a GI. He was in World War II. He saw what happened. He said they tried to kill everyone who's like me, and I'm going to get back at him. The producers was Mel Brooks's stated, overt, open revenge against Hitler. And yet many people thought he was doing just the opposite. He was insulting the Holocaust. His argument about that was, I'm not talking about the Holocaust. I'm just making fun of Hitler, the person. The divisions that come from that show that Shakespeare's quote is accurate. It's what you hear and what your sensibility brings to it. No one can ever argue you're wrong in being offended by that number, but other people aren't. And the problem with drawing the line, the problem with censorship, is who makes that decision. I guarantee you, whatever you think is offensive, someone else will disagree with.
And now we have the Book of Mormon, which is another one which some people were offended by, and many people find hilarious. What I find really funny is that the Mormon Church gives out the Book of Mormon at the play. They're like, "Hey, you want to get the real version?" Yeah. I mean, what a way to take it, and
but I think that's great.
Turn a negative to a positive.
Yeah, it is.
But the interesting thing with morality is those moral judges, because you say no one can decide for another what's moral, but we always have people trying to do that. And whenever they do that, two things happen. They make whatever we're not supposed to see so much more popular, because now everyone wants to see what you're all upset about. And then the morality police are always funny, like we're always laughing at them. For instance, like with the big gay marriage issue, how many of those guys who were speaking out, anti-gay marriage, turned out to be gay? To the point where it became a joke. Like when you yelled about it, we were like, okay, start your watch. Count down to how long before this guy comes out. Ladies and gentlemen, David Misch, Funny, the book. David, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you. And Alonzo Bodden.